And we're live.
Okay, so I am checking from the owners that is in the meeting and as the most voted topic, which is Arthur, and it is type unit meta as metric labels. So you can take it away, Arthur.
I see other with 8. I
Yeah,
don't
but
think this
we
is what it.
basically did it already. You mean the yet another cloud voice exporter?
Yeah.
I'll copy it around in the background. We already did it.
Okay.
I did it, I think, 2 weeks
There's
ago.
also query screenshots in Alert Manager with 8.
And is the
Mhm.
owner here? Maybe I missed that.
I'll poke Josh
Okay.
if he's around.
Okay. So if it's typing in it as metrics as David Ashford, like extra context in Dev Summit September in Berlin. We also had a second Dev Summit in September, like end of September, online. And during both Dev Summits, we discussed a way to not have a metric time series collisions when converting OTLP to Prometheus. There's a problem where in OTLP they can create 2 time series with the same name, as long as they have different types or different units. Well, today, if we convert those to Prometheus, they clash basically. So David Ashford has written a proposal to add type and unit as labels in time series. So when we convert OTLP, they don't clash. The proposal has some side effects. It proposes a way to add unit and type with double underscores, and traditionally we hide those kinds of labels. And we could use this as well in to differentiate classic histograms from native histograms. We could use those to do query hints, like do not do a rate over a gauge, for example. So what I would like to discuss, I would hope that David was here, but it's a holiday. I would like to discuss if there's anything that we are missing in the proposal, anything that we could already implement. How is the state?
I'm of course biased, but I like my own comments best. Let me paste that over. Where's my cursor?
Yeah, maybe from my side, I would propose we could have a discussion and proposal around this in terms of a storage and Prometheus data model changes and how it looks like on PromQL. And I would suggest we have a separate kind of discussion what changes would be needed to support something like that in open metrics, so in our exposition formats. And I added like we have this working group we started yesterday, and I think that's a brilliant place to really discuss any potential changes to the exposition format.
Ryan?
Yeah, I'm kind of late to the party. I started to think more deeply about this question yesterday and today because of the Open Metrics working group kickoff. And one thing that I noticed is that right now in Open Metrics, the way that we are adding native histograms means that if you have a metric that's called room temperature Celsius, you will not be able to say from just that name if it's a gauge or a histogram. So already we are a bit, in a problem with Open Metrics with that regard. So I kind of like this approach. I think it's for sure one of the options that we should consider.
Joy?
Sorry, did you call me or somebody else?
You.
Okay. I linked that comment, which I tried to formulate the minimal approach with the least changes, hoping that this would work without like fundamental changes in exposition format and data model and everything, just with a few minimal changes. And we could do this behind feature flag, yada, yada, everything, and just see how it works, right? I think this has a lot of potential, but also a lot of caveats. And if we could make this work, we could start to play with it and see if it feels right, and then like double down on it. I mean, it's hard sometimes to have this incremental approach, but if you could make it work, that might make it much easier if this is not like a change that we have to propagate through the whole stack once more. So the common link, I mean, I cannot, it would take too long to read it out, but I think this is pretty much in line with what David wants, I guess.
Yeah, I talked to David, and I think he already changed or planned to change the proposal in this direction. Yeah. So can you summarize like a TLDR of your idea? I think it's kind of like doable in 2 sentences.
Yeah, let's try. So this is, I mean, I think what David didn't really think about when he did the proposal is all the ripple effects that you have when you add a unit and a type label, and then you do normal promql on it. Will you keep, I mean, by default, if you don't change anything, right? Those labels are just normal labels. They will be kept. And then you have the unit seconds on a rate that is not seconds, whatever. It's seconds per second. Or maybe you get requests, you get whatever it is. So promql operations change the unit, right? And we at the moment that would be like huge to try to find out what unit changes are there and how to do them automatically. And same with type. If you rate a counter, it's a gauge, right? So should you drop the type? Should you drop the tape just sometimes? And that's all like super getting us into the weeds. So the zeroth approximation I propose here is we have the unit and the type label if you want in ingestion, so you can see them, but any promql, like it's essentially you can select them with label selectors, but any promql operation would otherwise ignore them, and any outcome of a promql operation would not have those labels. But you can use them for selection, you can use them for in label replace. So in case you want to transform them into something else, so you can disambiguate the results or something, right? Or you want to consciously say the unit is now request per second, right? After this rate, and then you could label replace it into place. And then, of course, we can do what David suggested, that in the UI we treat it specially. And this might not give us everything we want, but it wouldn't lead, hopefully, I mean, there might be repercussions not taken into account, but it hopefully wouldn't blow up anything. And then we can see how it works.
Prior?
Brian is probably.
Oh, sorry.
Well, just a small point. I put in another link. Bjorn, you said you liked your own comment, but that I find that comment completely mystifying without reading the start of your review. So I put a link to that in.
The longer one with all my concerns. Yeah.
Well, the point about the unit actually changes when you do certain functions is that's the motivation for why you said let's do this other thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So without having read that first, it's much harder to understand the one that you picked.
Okay.
So
the first one is kind of negative, right? As in, this is all too complicated. Let's not do it. And the other one is like, maybe we can do it that way. But yeah, you need that context.
There's a cost of the bytes. You know, currently we would store all of those characters per series. That's not a huge cost, but it's a thing. We'd also, so it's not the case that double underscores are currently dropped anywhere, right? The underscore name is specially treated in some contexts.
It might be that all underscore metrics are dropped after ingestion, so we needed exceptions here. Not sure.
I strongly doubt that. There's a...
Well, I think in metrics relabeling, they would be dropped, right? Because we drop any labels that start with a double underscore at the end of relabeling.
Okay, I can check that.
Only, to my knowledge, only in target relabeling, not matrix relabeling.
Okay.
So you can create labels that start with double underscores.
We definitely drop the ones that start with double underscore TMP because they're meant to be used for temporary steps in relabeling. But maybe it's only on double underscore TMP and not everything.
Yes,
we do keep like instance and so on, although they also get for the underscore address also gets dropped in the end. In target relabeling though. Yeah, so someone should check it, I guess. Yeah.
I'm quite sure that we don't drop everything which starts with double underscores. Yeah.
Do we need to think about exposition formats before moving on? Like, could we just handle the storage and care about the exposition later?
By exposition, you mean scraping?
Yeah, exactly. So we are not dealing with metrics for labeling. We're not dealing with extra labels like metadata and the label repeating it themselves.
Unit and type are already in the scraping exposition format.
Yeah, I guess one comment that Bjorn added is that if we ingest type and unit as labels, when we have a federated Prometheus, this Prometheus would expose the labels in the scrape. But do we need to worry about that today? Like before doing anything?
Yeah, so asking about federation seems legitimate. Asking about scraping does not.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think anything.
That's what I meant.
In scraping.
Okay, so I rephrase and I want to ask about federation.
This is the same, by the way, in remote write and anywhere, because we have duplicate information because we have now metadata and also labels. And we have to, ideally in this proposal, decide what wins or how to deduplicate this. And there is opportunity to remove majority part of the metadata storage, honestly, because we just need to help. We just need help, persisting in wall and TSDB and send everywhere help, because in theory we have this information in label. Just saying out loud as opportunity here. Yeah.
I was going to pretty much say what Bartek said, and I would point out that maybe as a first step, we should think about and decide whether we want the outcome, which is labels, and then worry about how we solve it efficiently. Because I feel like, my opinion is that more labels are coming because of various reasons, because of OpenTelemetry. So if we could solve, having a lot more labels, then that could solve multiple things. But okay, that's it from me.
Bjorn?
Is it me? Sorry. Okay. About the federation, so the thing is, we don't really have a collision there between the traditional unit and type metadata and the labels, because we just don't use them really in federation, because Prometheus doesn't have that information, right? So we would actually, that would be a kind of convenient side effect. By the way, federation is usually you federate stuff that comes out of a recording rule. So it comes out of a query, so it doesn't have those labels anyway if you do this zeroth order approach, right? But you could relabel a unit into place and a type, so you can actually convey this via federation. We have no way of doing this right now. So no collision there, but Bartek is right. In general, we should like have a priority, I guess. We add the label from the metadata if it doesn't already exist, or some simple rule like this, right? And about Julius, not a fan. I think this is really just an experiment and we can see how it works. I'm also suspicious, let's phrase it that way. But it might be the one thing we can do without changing everything, and see how it works and learn from it. And maybe the answer is, yes, we like units, but not in this way or something. Okay.
Richie?
I was in a call for a minute, so this might already have been said. And reading the ghost label comment of Bartek after I raised my hand, maybe it has been said. Anyway, there's also nothing stopping us from, if we want this, to synthesize labels from metadata which is stored, if you want to query this, and it would probably be cheaper. But I don't have a super strong opinion either way.
Yeah, that just pushes the problem somewhere else. The starting motivation is that it should be a different series if the type changes. And currently we only distinguish series on the labels. So this solves that problem by making it a label. If you say let's solve it another way by not making it a label, then you aren't solving the problem. So you have to also come up with a way to solve the problem.
Put it in the metric name.
Yeah, that's one alternative, actually. There's literally alternative that will have special suffixes that we can kind of like mask them, or yeah, again, we have suffixes, but like something that is more dynamic. Yeah, so that's an option. We do that in, or whatever. Yeah, there are some other experiments around that as well. So, but yeah.
Yeah, the proposal has an extra requirement that names are the same, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess from all the discussions, things that I want to bring back to David, what do we need to answer before getting the approvals? Do we need to answer the remote write, federation, exposition format, teacher flag? What else? Björn?
Sorry, this is about the previous thing. I mean, first what Brian said, right? We need to distinguish series, and we do this by labels. And I just want to recall or remind you that we are dealing with some kind of data model dissonance here. And the one is that traditional Prometheus metadata idea is that it doesn't distinguish a series from another, right? It's not identifying. And I even learned recently that even all the resource attributes in OTel are all defining the series identity. I thought at least some of them were meant to be not that. And then we are in this like, yeah, weird situation where it's actually not metadata from the Prometheus point of view. That's the one thing. And the other thing, what Judith just said, it's in the name, yes. But we have this other dissonance that people who use OTel get really confused when they see in Prometheus that the metric name is different, right? And the separator we have is not a forbidden character otherwise, so we have no safe way of telling this is just seconds as a unit, and this is seconds because I count the number of times I became second in the race or something, right? I mean, contrived example, of course, but This is why we are in this situation, right? We're discussing all of this because we are not on an island anymore, and we are having those dissonances. So I totally appreciate that there's this. Okay, well, that was not about Arthur's question. I have nothing to add to that list right now, but I also think a design doc doesn't have to wait until it is like every little piece is completely nailed down. I think it's also fine if there's something like we have to come up with a priority rule if the metadata conflicts with the label or something. It doesn't have to say how it looks like. I mean, if it does, even better, but I don't think we need to keep this in limbo until every single thing is nailed down.
Yeah, like if there is anything that is clearly not a good idea, then we wouldn't proceed, right? We don't need to solve every problem, but like there's nothing like completely absurd in the proposal. Is that it, Bartek?
Maybe just last high level. Yeah, I agree with Arthur. It's like a balance mode, like whatever we can do right now, but we have to keep iterating. But just one thing I want to kind of capture. So we used to have, when we were designing remote right to zero, like it was so clear that the long time data model of Prometheus is just labels and values, and it was amazing. And our storage is just like that already. Maybe with exception of exemplars and experimentation on metadata, which is another API call, another storage. And with this proposal, we are navigating back into the old model of like schema, well, kind of schemaless, but label-based, metric storage, which kind of kept us going very, very long. So I think we are going back in this direction versus there was literally in the PromCon this year discussion of like metadata storages and richer, metadata kind of, utilization. And I'm actually liking the vision of like not having separate storages and really keep what should be on the series into labels and treat labels in a special way, optimize on storage, have different indexes for different labels, but really have a really clear semantic of what types of labels we have. We have name already, which is special. Let's have a special for type and unit. Explain exactly how it behaves. Yeah, it's difficult, but I think it's more difficult than asking users to, I don't know what, create their own SQLite storage for metadata and have another calls on every API call. We already have a massive problem, in a Thanos and Cortex systems that try to utilize a new Prometheus UI, because on every character we check metadata and it's super expensive on those systems, right? So I don't know, maybe there's a way to really just buy into like just label only storage or like data model. Is that make sense, or is there any thoughts about that?
Yeah,
It's Cryo first.
Yeah, I just wanted to plus one, Bartek. In my mind, this, going back to labels kind of focuses the attention on, what we need to solve. Because with metadata, it's unclear even what to solve. But if it go with labels, if we solve efficient labels and, a lot of labels, slightly different kind of labels, I think that's more focused problem even than metadata. So it's kind of it's an easier thing for me to wrap my head around.
Yudis?
So I'll be the counter voice. At least someone needs to say why they don't like it. So first of all, anything in a label is always going to be identifying, and there's going to be certain pieces of metadata that are not supposed to be identifying. For example, I think counter created timestamps, right? And maybe other things. And then it's going to pollute any existing user who doesn't know about this new thing that now units and other metadata suddenly appears in your results. And then we're going to also put a lot of like stuff that is very, more schema full and clearly defined and typed into bare strings again, that we have to then check again that we actually put the right stuff in there and so on. And then also unit and type I mean, that's my strong opinion. I always like to have it in the metric name, so I don't have to like check a label what it is when I read a PromQL expression somewhere. Now, of course, you could still, when you write a selector, you have the curly braces and say unit equals seconds, but do you always want to do that, right? And I don't know, for me, it's a bit overextending the original idea of what a label is, which is the primary features, dimensionalities that identify something. And now we put like all kinds of other stuff in it that's just like serves to confuse people and serves to confuse tooling and so on. And so that's just my counterpoint. I see the other points as well, but I would love to preserve labels to be like the primary dimensions that you split up a label, a metric by.
I still don't feel I have a fully formed opinion on this specific discussion, but as a more than an anecdote or data point, yesterday during the OM 2.0 call kickoff, we had a similar discussion. And one of the points which I made was I would like us to avoid falling into a trap of Perl 6 or Python 3, basically creating too much friction for the people who are already happy within the ecosystem while trying them to lift to new style of thinking, to different ecosystem compatibility, blah, 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 blah. There's always going to be some pain somewhere, but there is a good argument to be made to keep a happy path and a known efficient path within the Prometheus ecosystem for anyone who moves within the Prometheus ecosystem, and try and shove any pain of translations and such outside of the core ecosystem to basically have a happy path within who's using the stuff, and the vast majority of cloud native is using Prometheus ecosystem natively. So that's a little bit of, I think, more on Julia's side, but I don't have a full opinion here, but I think it's important to avoid kneecapping ourselves in an attempt to be overly compatible with everything.
Yeah, it is OTel. I mean, this is Python 3 if there was an Open Python that someone had showed up.
Did everything differently.
Yeah. Showed up and declared victory.
Do we have any other suggestions besides labels to solve the problem? There's also the option of not solving, of course.
I think the metadata store project is, I mean, you know, outside of the fact that we don't really have answers there either to most of these questions, but that's.
Is this actually a common problem that people do define in OTel the same metric name but with different units? Or is it just like could maybe one day happen kind of thing?
It happens right now, just because some semantic convention were named from milliseconds and seconds, and people are very slow. Even among OpenTelemetry now SDKs, they're still kind of using the old semantic conversion just because there is not enough time to update it on time. So it happens a lot, kind of as an edge case, yeah, but regular. Oh, anyway, thank you for your opinions. I think this is great, and I like maybe this idea of like treating whatever we put in label, it has to be, you know, identifying, and well, type and unit kind of suits that. And I will also want to add another point to Julius, like we are not solving OpenTelemetry problems. We are solving our problems, like with native histograms and current collisions with types, right, for example.
We have raised hands.
I mean,
you can...
yeah, we already have the problem with native histograms that you don't know from the metric name. It's a native histogram. It could be a gauge, whatever. The other thing that I was thinking about is that if we don't solve this, you know, OpenTelemetry folks have a way of solving their own problems, so they will probably come up with an exposition format themselves, which we will end up have to transform or scrape, probably scrape. So yeah, I don't think we can just not do anything. That would that would not work, in my opinion.
To the earlier question of how could alternative approaches look like, the older hands on this call will remember that at one point I advocated for annotations, basically same as you have in alerts, labels which do not give identity, and this might be a little bit of a more lightweight thing. It's also honestly just a different word for saying it's metadata. It has slightly different properties, but it is directionally the same. The other thing is, I don't believe we should cater to temporary cleanups in other standards too much, because if they are being cleaned up, I would much rather them being properly cleaned up elsewhere. As to there being another text format, I would hope not, and this is probably something we can also just have a conversation with OpenTelemetry with. Like, are there any plans to go in this route and maybe not prevent, not repeat mistakes of the past and work together earlier rather than build something which is then incompatible? So I don't think we are completely locked into overextending. I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying there's more options than just
Right. Any other ideas?
Did we come up with some consensus?
Doesn't seem like it.
The consensus could be like we still want to explore more before committing.
I mean, we should just clarify that what we do with this labels thing is an experiment, right? This is not, yes, we want this, ship it. It's, let's implement this zeroth approach and play with it. It's behind the feature flag. It's not a stable feature. And then we have to come to a conclusion. If we want to double down on that, if we want to just take lessons from it and follow another approach and all those things. Right?
That sounds good to me.
But I mean, that's different from just saying we need more discussion before we even submit the design doc, right?
Yeah.
Better write onto the design doc. This is an experiment, like similar to the info function, right? Where we never said this is now a new first-class feature. Sorry.
So do we want to experiment with this idea? Is this the consensus that we would like to reach? Or do you want to continue discussing this?
We will continue discussing, but this doesn't block the experimentation phase. That's my understanding.
Yeah, the idea is to get this design doc into merge this design, get it into a state where we can merge and then actually merge it like as the next step, right?
Okay, so we would like to
in the doc that this is an experiment.
we would like to merge the design document as an experiment, or like, what is the wording here? More experienced people could, if you can help, I would appreciate it. So we would like to merge the design document as an experiment and continue discussing the alternatives.
Yeah, looks good to me, I guess.
Is it clear enough?
I mean, maybe.
Edit however you like.
Maybe something like this.
100%.
I also added something on this being a feature flag, just to call it out and not do it silently.
Okay. So call for consensus. The next step is to get the proposal into a shape where we can merge it behind a feature flag. Note that the proposal needs to call out this is an experiment to explore and not yet on track to be a stable feature. With the experience gained from it, we can continue the discussion. Do we have a consensus?
This sounds now really weird. Merge it behind a feature flag. Maybe we can mention to be implemented behind a feature flag. Maybe this makes more sense as the location of the feature flag keyword.
Sounds good to me.
Sure.
And this to explore maybe is too wordy.
Okay. Do we have a consensus after the wording changes? Anyone disagrees? All right. So the next topic we still have time to discuss. I think it's again from Björn, but I need to find it. It's about the comments. Yes, here we go.
Yeah, this is hopefully short, but
Yeah.
I might eat my words. Where is it?
I am just pasting it now. Yeah.
So, okay, once upon a time, there was, I think it was even GoVet that was super picky about doc comments. Like it would call out every exported type, or what is the right word? Exported
symbol.
It's a symbol, that's the right word. Right? Every exported symbol that didn't have a doc comment was called out. And I don't know when it happened, but one day GoVet decided to not complain about that. I guess people were fed up with like very redundant doc comments like open file opens the file, right? Or something, which is true for like symbols that have a name that just speaks for itself. The flip side of that coin is, why are you thumbing down?
The insisting that open file have a comment saying open file opens a file.
Yeah, you dislike.
I explicitly hate that.
Yeah. So that's very understandable. And so it disappeared from the Prometheus code base, and we have this Golang CI linter, right, which has all the features if we want them, and it was configured to not care about doc comments at all. And then I noticed that because I saw a bunch of like pull requests that just said, in this doc comment, it still uses the old function name and hasn't been updated. So now we get warned about malformed doc comments to avoid short PRs like the one I put in here. So this is back in, and I think that makes sense, right? If you have a doc comment and it doesn't start with the name of the symbol, sometimes it's still weird, but it's very rare that you get weird results. And if it's really super weird, you just add the pragma that you wanted in the other state. But I also discovered that we have tons of exported symbols that totally should have a doc comment, but it doesn't, right? And now the question is, should we just remind ourselves that we should be more careful and code reviews that exported symbols that do have a doc comment should have a doc comment, or should we bite the bullet and just go back to every exported symbol needs a doc comment, even if it's stupid, right? I also don't like it if I have to write the stupid doc comment, but in many cases, because I had to write the stupid doc comment, I found actually something useful I can put into there, which is a bit of Stockholm syndrome, I guess. But yeah, I essentially just want to know what's the feeling in the room with all of you, what direction should we go. Note, there are about 500 missing doc comments in Prometheus right now. Many other Go repos have, like the linter config is not synchronized via this bot. So most repos have way less linter checks, which is also an encouragement to whoever maintains a repo. Maybe you want to switch on more linters on your repo. Okay, so please discuss.
My first question is,
you can call yourself.
Yeah, I'm just for the ordering it. I raised my hand. So, like, the first question is, like, if we enable this, who is going to handle that 500 missing doc comments?
Yeah, of course, we need somebody to volunteer, but I would even do that if we agree of doing that. I think the more important thing is, do we want this as all, or is it actually fine at the current state? I mean, the current state is not fine because we have doc comments that are missing, but should we just rely on like our own discipline to add doc comments where they are needed? That's the question.
Do we know from those 500s how many are like open file or actually functions that need an explanation? I generally like comments, even if it's stupid.
Sorry, Brian?
Well, just to repeat what I said before, I do not want anyone, including me, to type in a comment just to satisfy a tool, a comment that's completely empty of value. And that happens.
Bjorn?
I think people can judge when a comment will have value. They can judge that when they're writing the code, and they can judge it when they're reviewing the PR. So let's do that.
To Arthur's question, I haven't done an honest count. My perceived count is, of course, I notice all the doc comments that are missing and get upset about them, and I never miss the doc comments that would be stupid, right? But I assume that the majority of those 500 are doc comments we don't really need, but maybe if there are 100 we need, we feel the pain. But I mean, we had a bit of people typing into the chat, and some of them seem to just like the pedantry, but maybe if we have like 2/3 liking the pedantry, 1/3 don't like it, it's still maybe not a good solution to force the 1/3 to do what they don't like. But maybe we could, as a first step, just say we really want doc comments that make sense, and remind each other that we should actually take this into account in code review, and we see how well it works. And if like 3 months later we still see loads of missing doc comments that we actually would like to have, then we can reconsider if we need to put on the screws or something.
Bartek?
Yeah, I wanted to address Brian's opinion, because I agree. Some comments are just, or like some structs are so simple, very well named, so why we even have to name them? There's a solution. Let's figure out the solution. And for example, why not have a very common no-lint setting where you put in this on this method to mark that it would be too trivial to comment. And let's make it a very obvious choice and do it. Like if there's open file, nothing to add, just add this / no lint exported comment, blah, done. Or have any other way to kind of like solve this problem. That's one thing. And second thing about that old 500 previous exported thing, I would be okay with like not doing that at once, and just in a eventual way, when we enable this linter, when you would change the code file that has this, you kind of do a bit of work and kind of fix the previous methods. I think that's okay to do as well.
Brian?
So yeah, I mean, similar to what Bartek was saying, the thing there's a whole art in naming things. and very often you can name the thing so it's completely self-explanatory, and where you use it, it just reads like, unfortunately, like English. For the people who don't speak English, it's unfortunate. Or for whom English is not their first language, it's not so great. But for me, it's great. Anyway, if you can name something exactly what it does, then that's the best, because it says what it does and you use it in context and it reads perfectly and everything is great. And indeed, when you find yourself struggling to name the thing, read two things and check this and do this other thing, then that's because you've written a bad function. So I just want to add that this what we should be striving to do is have things that are so obvious they don't need explanation. But I don't have a huge problem with the other solution Bartek said, which is a no-lint comment.
Okay, my hand was raised. I would like to just address that, like, who is using Prometheus? I think this is mostly about Prometheus repo, and it's mostly used by some downstream projects, so it's not like everyone else. And it's not like client Golang that we should be super pedantic about this. Probably who is using Prometheus repo downstream, like Thanos, Mimer, like Cortex, all other repos, probably they know what they are looking at. Maybe we shouldn't be that pedantic about this. Bjorn?
I mean, I found myself quite often more in Prometheus, because that code base is so freaking complex by now, that I was thinking, okay, is this function whatever? Is it concurrency safe, or what does it even do here? And then, I mean, luckily we have good tools to navigate code bases by now, including which interfaces are implemented by this function and stuff like that, which was also something I used to write into those stupid doc comments, that this function implements the following, or is intended to implement the following interface, which arguably we don't need with modern tools. But yeah, I mean, I was actually mostly feeling the pain in Prometheus, where I was really had a lot of questions. What is this method doing? Why is it even there? And all those meta things that you sometimes want to know for a non-trivial one, right? But yeah, I'm actually with like a no-lint pragma for. I mean, that would be also. It's almost as bad as just putting an alibi like doc comment there. I mean, at least it doesn't pollute the Go doc. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel right now we should maybe encourage people. I mean, I still have on my list to write like a style guide, Go style guide for Prometheus. And this could be part of it, right? And then we can see how far it goes.
Okay, so we are running out of time. Do we have any other thoughts on the topic? Okay, so do we have some sort of consensus maybe on like for enabling it and using no-lint annotation? And we call this as a consensus.
I mean, I would be against the no-lint approach, but only, how to phrase that? I wouldn't block a consensus, but we shouldn't formulate this as the consensus of everybody thinks like me. I mean, let's phrase it the other way. We had a few voices that said they don't want to enforce a doc comment always, right? Can we conclude that we shouldn't do that, even if it's a minority that would be opposed? Is somebody as mad about not enforcing it as Brian would be mad if he enforced it? That's the question. Okay, nobody seems to be mad. So let's not enforce it.
Okay, can we also come up with, I don't know, just since Bartek mentioned that in the comments that like Thanos has a coding style guide, maybe we can have a Prometheus style guide. Maybe we don't enforce it, but we can just like link to this document, Prometheus style guide, and then say that, okay, maybe you should put a comment on this time. Some sort of.
It is on my very long to-do list to write a Go style guide for Prometheus. If somebody beats me to it, great, right? But I put it on my list already. And I don't want to discourage anyone else from doing it. Just, I think we need a style guide anyway. Not just because of this.
Anyone wants to write the style guide in the call? Or what would be the consensus? So we are not enforcing it, but we are encouraging it. Not like, or like we need to put it in words that like in a meaningful way or in a useful way.
So I propose consensus is we encourage coders and reviewers to pay more attention if there is a doc comment needed and it's not there. And in like 3 months, we revisit the topic and see if we still have a problem with missing doc comments. That would be my proposal. And then we can think if we should do something with linters.
I think a code style guide would be more helpful. But we can start with this, of course.
Since I have a consensus on having or trying to have a style guide document.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's consensus anywhere, but we can write it down. We want a Prometheus Go style guide. Björn has it on his list. If you want to do it yourself, just let me know so I don't do it in parallel. That's what I suggest. And I would appreciate if somebody else wants to take over because it has been on my list for a while. Together with, by the way, but that's a different topic. We need like some contributor guide. We have, as I found out in various discussions, we have like very different ideas what is needed to merge a pull request, which approvals, who even merges, well, all those things, right? That's written down nowhere. It's just tribal knowledge. And yeah, that's kind of weird for a very large open source project.
I don't think that's weird. I think that proves that normal standard Go style guide is good enough and really applicable in majority of places.
I mean, weird is that we don't have a rule. What kind of approval do you need before you merge a pull request?
Yeah, sure.
We have rules, but they're not written down. They are somewhere in our heads, and everyone has a slightly different version in their head.
Okay, we are out of time. I wrote a consensus statement. I don't know if it's like decent enough, but we encourage contributors and reviewers to pay more attention to doc comments. We don't want to enforce it with a linter. We also want to write a Prometheus Go style guide. Björn has it in his to-do list, but contributors are welcome.
Let
Is
me
this
ask
please?
Yeah.
Okay. Please let Björn know if you work on this to avoid redundant work. So with the edits, do we have a consensus? Anyone disagrees? Cool. With that, let me mark that. We are end of our time. Thanks for everyone for attending. Have a nice holidays. I guess the next one will be on January. Bye.
Bye.